Moving on now, the Trump administration continuing to crack down on illegal immigration across the country, including here in the tri-state. And with that, the role of sanctuary cities is now being called into question as House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer has called on New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the mayors of 3 other cities to testify before Congress, claiming that they're refusing to fully cooperate with federal immigration enforcement. Joining us now to discuss is criminal defense attorney Eric Faddis. Eric, good to have you with us here this morning.
Good to be with you, Chris.
So let's start with the immigration policies and what the Trump administration is actually ordering when it comes to deportations. Just give us a little background on the legal process as a sanctuary city and how the deportations here actually work.
Sure. So generally speaking, what happens is ICE, the immigration authority, becomes aware of someone who's potentially deportable, and they either send it to like the legal route through an immigration court where there's a hearing, or they go through expedited removal, which really just kicks a person out immediately. Sanctuary cities come in where they either cooperate and communicate with ICE or they do not. So they can really assist in that system, but also frustrate that system depending on those choices.
And it seems like here in New York, there's kind of a, I don't want to say a delicate balance, because I think in most people's eyes, delicate's probably not the right word to use. But Mayor Adams, has cozied up to President Trump. So they are allowing some deportations, but it is a sanctuary city. So there are some protections in place, whether it comes to schools, churches, hospitals, and whatnot. So is that balance really being met here in New York, or is it really more the mayor is kind of calling the shots on this?
I think that balance is really in flux right now based on how things are evolving in the larger immigration picture. Some sanctuary cities are trying to protect, like you said, churches, schools, that kind of thing from immigration authority invasion. But other municipalities are okay with that kind of cooperation. And so that's really an open question going forward.
All right. So the mayor is being called to face the House Oversight Committee, who say they're investigating sanctuary jurisdictions, their impact on public safety, the effectiveness of the federal efforts to enforce immigration law. Does Congress have any real legal say in this, or is this more showmanship?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that the federal government through Congress gets to decide immigration laws and immigration policy. And if there is a local state law or policy that conflicts with that larger federal picture, that state law loses based on the supremacy clause of the Constitution. That being said, states can sort of enact their own policies and procedures and try to sidestep some of these larger federal requirements. So yes and no, the Congress has some say yes and no.
So, and I know we kind of talk about this all the time because this seems to be the confusing part. President Trump has always said from the get-go, this was before he was even elected on the campaign trail, we're going after violent criminals. And I think most agree, yes, deport the violent criminals. We don't want them around here. They're making things tough on everybody. But there's that line that you want to make sure you're not rounding up everyone, the legal immigrants as well, because some are getting caught up on this, and you're finding that the Trump administration even now has to release a lot of people that are rounded up nationwide.
Of course, Chris. I mean, naturally, in any law enforcement action, there are going to be false positives. The authorities might think a person is deportable when they are not. And it's difficult to tell sometimes. If there's a prior removal order that says there was prior violent crimes, that's a little more clear cut. But when we're talking about a person who has just been arrested and accusations are happening, it's not clear cut.
So let me ask you this. The mayor's pretty much been supportive of the president's efforts when it comes to, as I mentioned, dealing with the violent criminal aspect here. He's even met with the borders czar, Tom Homan. But let me say, as he faces this line of questioning, what can the mayor expect to be asked in front of Congress now? And I guess to the bigger picture, what kind of role will this hearing play in the lives of illegal immigrants here in New York City? Because again, I think a lot of times we hear one thing from the mayor, but there's different actions.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mayor's cooperation, the timing of it is a bit curious because it's been a lot more. He's been a lot more supportive since he's been under indictment, perhaps looking for a pardon. That being said, I think he's going to be asked about what are the local policies in terms of cooperating with ICE, in terms of providing information to ICE and detaining individuals so that ICE can come and do their thing. I think the larger picture for immigrants is we're going to get a glimpse into what this could look like over the next 3.5 years or so in New York, and that sort of cooperation between the federal government and local officials.
So it's essentially, I guess it's safe to say it's a fluid situation. I mean, it really is, for lack of a better term. I mean, the goalpost seems to be moving quite a bit. But again, we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see him testify before Congress and actually answer some questions. So, Eric, thank you. Good to see you again. All right.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk more about this, of course, as it continues to evolve. Hey, health.